Brandon Aiyuk to the Cleveland Browns. It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. I did not mean to make that rhyme. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I really didn't mean to make that rhyme. What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer Sherman, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast, proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Browns couldn't quite swing a deal for Brandon Aiyuk back in August. I think there's a path towards them being able to do it now, though. Also, I admire Kenny Pickett's attitude, but it's not going to happen. Plus, he does seem to know the Browns' plan at quarterback, and the more Shedeur Sanders talks, the more it feels like he's a perfect fit for the Browns. I do want to thank you for being an everydayer with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus episodes on some weekends and sometimes multiple episodes a day. It all depends, but it's all totally free to you. All you have to do is hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel, where you can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 in bonus bets. I think the Browns have a real opportunity here to revisit a trade for Brandon Aiyuk and actually pull it off this time if they want to. There's a couple levels and reasons for this. I'm going to walk you through this a little bit here, but we know that the Browns were linked to Brandon Aiyuk back in August, leading into the 2024 season. They could not get a deal done. He was holding out at the time, ended up getting a new contract extension and stays in San Francisco. He ends up suffering week 7, I believe it was, a torn MCL and ACL, done for the year. And, I like back then, the package centered around sending Amari Cooper, and I think it was a third round pick, something like that, to the 49ers in exchange for Brandon Aiyuk. And it was an obvious, like with the Browns even being rumored to make that potential trade, it was an obvious statement that the Browns were trying to get younger at the position, get a guy who was 25 with, a contract coming that would lock him up until he was, almost 30 years old, and a chance to, sort of have this young up-and-coming wide receiving core that featured obviously both Jerry Jeudy and then Brandon Aiyuk. And it makes a lot of sense. Amari Cooper was aging. He was going to be 30, and they clearly didn't want to re-sign him because they didn't want to give him the extension. So fast forward to now March of 2025, and just this conversation starts for me with just take a look at what the 49ers have done. They have been in full-on signaling rebuild mode. They traded Deebo Samuel to the Commanders. They cut Kyle Juszczyk. They cut Leonard Floyd. They released Malik Collins, who's now a Cleveland Brown. That deal got done on Thursday. Released Javon Hargrave. They signed DeMarcus Robinson, which was a statement about like, hey, we're looking for other wide receivers. We're looking to sort of find some different weapons here and do some things differently. And they obviously drafted Pearsall last year, and he sort of broke out late in the season to sort of show like, okay, we have some high hopes for his future. So it seems like they're sort of changing out the old guard for the new guard and doing things a little bit differently. I mean, they are making moves to shed cap in anticipation of having to pay Brock Purdy, obviously. And they're in straight up, I mean, they're in a transition period right now. They are going into more of a sort of reset, and there's still some key players there. Nick Bosa's still there. For now, Christian McCaffrey's still there, though there's rumors about him getting traded as well. And that same thing applies to, it sounds like, Brandon Aiyuk. From what I've heard and what I understand, they sort of regret giving him that deal. Obviously, he sat out camp. They eventually gave in, paid him, and then he tears his ACL and MCL in week 7 and is done for the season. And I think they feel that they maybe should have not tried so hard to get a deal done as much as they did, especially in a lost season that they had, and maybe just let Brandon Aiyuk do what he wanted to do. Maybe actually follow through and trade Brandon Aiyuk. And I know there were some conversations about like where he was going to go. The Steelers were also interested. There were some other teams involved as well. Maybe he didn't want to come to Cleveland. That was all part of the conversation too. But now it feels like there is a window here We're with the 49ers doing what they're doing, sort of rethinking the way they're going to go about business, especially knowing they got to pay Brock Purdy. What direction are they going to take this thing, and who do they want around for what emerges on the other side of this transition? And Brandon Aiyuk might be out. They might decide it's time to trade him. And there already are, I should say, rumors percolating that they're shopping him, that teams are calling, teams are interested. I don't know why the Browns wouldn't get back in that conversation and try to land Brandon Aiyuk. Now, yes, obviously he's coming off of a serious knee injury. That's never, the ideal circumstances to acquire a player. That probably complicates things a little bit because maybe the 49ers don't want to trade him at this juncture. Maybe his value is not as high. Maybe they want to wait. But in retrospect, like if they can trade him and clear some of his cap off the books, and that's the key thing, because Ayuk's contract, the way it's set up, there is a whole bunch of guaranteed money that officially kicks in starting April 1st of this year. He gets his option bonus in a 2025 option bonus kicks in on the 1st of April. No, this is not an April Fool's joke. It really is the 1st of April. A 2026 option bonus guarantees on the 1st of April. And there's a big chunk of his money that's guaranteed just in general on April 1st that they have to consider if they want to pay that or not and commit that to him and be the ones paying that. If they were able to facilitate a trade and get him off of their books, it basically, their dead cap hit is only $18.4 million. And that's all based off of like a previous signing bonus and some other bonus money that they sort of had to restructure down into void years and all those things. But and their savings is in the negative. They're a minus $7 million, but that's a chunk that you can eat right now before you pay Brock Purdy and kind of get it out of the way, clear off your books, and start fresh with sort of a new salary cap to work with. Once you get a massive Brock Purdy extension on the books at some point and the cap keeps going up, but you'll have, again, it's a 1 year sort of bite the bullet to come out on the other side with a pretty clean book, all things considered, when you get that money off of out of the way now. So if they wait, it's a different story. A post June 1st trade, they have more dead cap that they have to sort of account for there, just based off of the especially if it was like a release situation where they had to release him. So it all goes to say that, like, yeah, they can save a decent chunk of money by moving on from him before that April 1st deadline where some of this kicks in. So they have to consider those things. They have to think about that. And as they're in a transitional period, I think that they are going to start shopping him. And I think the Browns will be linked to him because they were linked to him before. And if they're still, and here's the other part of this too, like, this is not a very good wide receiver draft class. So you're better off taking a swing at wide receiver via trade, like I'm sort of proposing here with Brandon Aiyuk, to bolster your room or add to it, rather than relying on this draft class or whatever table scraps are left in the free agent market. Elijah Moore's still out there. Could you bring him back? Maybe, but is that really like the impact player you're looking for? I know they still have high hopes for Cedric Tillman, but they were going to keep Cedric Tillman around along with Brandon Aiyuk last year when they were trying to trade for him. So that doesn't really change things. So I don't know. I think there's a path forward here that you could see the Browns get involved, that you could see the Browns finally be able to get a deal done. And I don't think, because of the injury situation and the money that you'd be taking on if you're the Browns, with obviously the guarantees that kick in by April 1st, there's a possibility that you could get him at a reasonable price. Like, maybe it doesn't cost quite as much as it did a year ago. Now, he still is a wide receiver, in his mid-20s with a high ceiling, chance to be really good. So you're banking on that. And, a knee injury isn't going to be devastating to a guy at that age or at this portion of his tenure for like that Aiyuk is. So you can survive that. He can come back and be fine and be still a really productive player, obviously. So I'm sure the price is still going to be something, substantial, but it's not going to be quite as high probably as it would have been in August when they were trying to sort of get a new contract done and he was fully healthy. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to maybe go out and actually get that deal done this time around. Don't be surprised if you start to hear inklings about Brandon Aiyuk being shopped And don't be surprised if you hear the Browns involved, because they were involved before. And I bet you they're probably going to want to get back involved and try to add a receiver that way. Because like I said, this wide receiver class is not a great one. And Andrew Berry's had a tough time hitting on wide receivers in the draft to begin with. I don't know that he can just count on like finding a guy in the second or third round that's going to perform for them this year. Then when that's been hard to come by anyway. And I think their best bet could be maybe facilitating a trade. That has generally been where Andrew Berry's found his best receivers anyway. So why not try to get back in on Brandon Aiyuk and potentially set yourself up with two really good young wide receivers for years to come? It's a good idea. We'll see if it comes to fruition, but I'm already thinking about Brandon Aiyuk as a Cleveland Brown in 2025 and beyond. With that said, Kenny Pickett had his introductory press conference to the media on Thursday. Some of what he had to say, we'll recap it for you, including he's going to compete for the starting job, he says, and he seems to know this. While he's going to be competing for the starting job, he knows what the team's plans are at the quarterback position. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. It's no secret. We all watch the tournament coming up here in the next couple weeks because of the upsets. We love the underdog stories. They're the lifeblood of college basketball this time of year, and especially with a team like UConn, back-to-back defending champs, not being quite as dominant as they were the previous 2 years. FanDuel makes it easy to back the underdogs with spreads, totals, and game props of your choosing. And in the end, though, you do have to have a favorite in mind. For me, I kind of got my eye on Maryland out of the Big Ten. They got great senior guard play. That's always a key this time of year. I'll be putting some money on the Terrapins in the FanDuel app, which is also easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. There is no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com. All right, so as I said, Kenny Pickett met with the media on Thursday for his introductory press conference here in Cleveland. Talked about coming back to the AFC North, what that meant to him. Wouldn't really get into what went wrong in Pittsburgh, but reflected on the fact that he had met with Kevin Stefanski, and it was similar to the offense that he ran at Pitt when he was in college. So he has some familiarity there in terms of like the system. Mark Whipple ran a similar sort of style of offense. So he feels like he can be pretty comfortable in this system. And I do think Kevin Stefanski's offense generally is pretty quarterback friendly. It's pretty easy to sort of navigate for guys. So that seems like there's a comfort there for Pickett. But the most important stuff from Pickett came from conversations about A, the quarterback room, and B, how he sort of envisions his role with this team. And he made it very clear that he plans on competing for the starting job. And he was very blunt about the fact that he considers himself a starter. But what's interesting is along those lines is that as we think about the Browns' plan at quarterback this offseason, they've obviously traded for Pickett. There's rumors Russell Wilson was in town on Thursday. They're going to add another veteran most likely. It sounds like they've made their plans clear to Kenny Pickett, who already sort of understands what's coming down the pike here for Cleveland. Here's a clip for you from his press conference on Thursday.
Yeah, I do. I do view myself as a starter. I'm sure they're going to bring in another veteran and who knows what else. But, I'm just excited to be here and compete with whoever. All the quarterback rooms I've been in, each room's been really tight. We all pull for each other. And, that's really what it's all about, getting better together and making the team better. So, definitely prepared for whatever situation that, may present itself.
So first of all, it's very, very admirable that Kenny Pickett believes he's going to have a chance to start and he's going to compete for the starting job. And I do believe it when he says that. Like, none of these quarterbacks, when you add them, whether it's free agency, trade, whatever, none of them are going to come to their new team and just be like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm just here to be a backup. Unless I guess it's like you've been a backup your whole career and you kind of know what the skivvy is. Like, hey, yeah, I'm here to be a backup, and that's my role. Like last year, Jameis Winston kind of accepted, like, I'm playing behind Deshaun Watson. I get it. So, yeah, there are situations where you would come in and do that. But in the situation the Browns are in, where they don't really have a quarterback, Deshaun Watson's not walking through that door anytime soon. He can barely walk without re-rushing his Achilles. So, that ship has sailed. And Andrew Berry is keeping his promise to reshape this entire quarterback room as a whole. And so the first move they made was Kenny Pickett. And so I understand where it's like, this is a situation where the job is kind of wide open. It could be up for grabs for anybody, whether that's Pickett, whether that's another veteran, potentially Russell Wilson, whether that's a rookie coming down the pike here, as he sort of alluded to. In the end, though, as has been the case since this trade was announced and revealed, and as has been the case that I've talked about on the show, Pickett is viewed as the backup here in Cleveland. He in theory, he'll have a chance to compete because your quarterback room is in flux, and whoever comes in, they're all going to sort of like go out, put the balls out there, let them do their thing, and then they'll set the depth chart. There's no like set depth chart this year. You don't have that franchise guy already in place like you did a year ago with Deshaun Watson, thinking it's his job, nobody else's, to sort of set the line at like, this is who's starting. Everyone who's coming in here is going to be new. They're going to be fresh. They're going to have a chance to, show what they can do, and then they'll set the depth chart. But I can assure you, Kenny Pickett is viewed as kind of like the backup option. He's viewed as the guy that can, in a pinch, fill in, come in for you and do some nice things. I think he's done that. He did that in Philly last year for a couple games, and the tape he put out there was pretty good, aside from that one play where he sort of threw the ball and just kind of fell to the ground at the same time. But we don't have to talk about that right now. So yes, like that is probably going to be his role. But I admire the fact that he's going to come in and work hard. And I have no doubts about that either. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a guy that does want to obviously make it in this league and start in this league. And so you can tell he's serious about the idea that, like, I'll get a shot and I'll do my best. Now, that said, in that same exact clip, you heard him mention, I'm sure they'll bring in another veteran, which basically confirms, like, he knows that this is part of the plan. He knows that the conversations with Russell Wilson are a real thing, and that there's other quarterbacks out there that they could potentially bring in to play alongside Pickett and with Pickett and see who wins the job or whatever, and that he'll be competing with, as he talks about who will be competing with. So he's already expecting that to happen. It sounds like that was communicated to him, or at least that he knows where their heads are kind of at with this thing, and that he's going to get a shot to compete against other players coming in. He also sort of said, and whoever else comes in, which that sort of leads us into the draft. What's going to happen? What are the Browns going to do? And it again confirms the notion that it seems like anybody within the organization, even the newest players who are coming to the facility to hold press conferences as they get announced, and Kenny Pickett, even they understand the Browns are in position to draft a quarterback, and it seems like it's something that they're considering. So I'm not going to go as far as saying like he's spilling the beans on this, because this is what we've all already figured anyway. But it is, notable that he even sort of sees what's coming down the pike here. He sees another veteran being added. He sees potentially a rookie being added, and he knows the situation he's stepping into. Again, it's not a secret. It's what's sort of been on the table for the Browns for several months now, and we all kind of get the idea that, like, this is where they're at. They're in the vein of Andrew Berry saying he's reinventing the quarterback room and reshaping the quarterback room. It makes sense that he's, again, going to those three buckets that I laid out a couple episodes ago. Veteran that is a reclamation project, that's Pickett. Veteran that you know what you're getting, been around the league, maybe older, not going to not going back to his prime. You know what to expect when he comes in, and it's just going to kind of be, a steady Eddie sort of performance from that guy, but you can trust him to run the offense. That's a Russell Wilson. That's maybe a Joe Flacco if it gets to that. That's maybe a Kirk Cousins if that situation, sorts itself out in the coming days here. We'll see. And then your rookie, which, again, that could be somebody at 2, which I believe in more and more it is going to be. Or it could be a Jackson Dart in the second round or whatever, whoever the Browns maybe value several rounds into April's draft. So we'll see what it all shakes out to be. But the fact that Pickett mentioned that was notable, clearly understands the situation he's stepping into, clearly understands where the Browns' minds are at in terms of building this room. And it was more evidence that quarterback is very much still a conversation in terms of the now, finding another veteran to bring into the situation, but also in the draft where they could land one of these top guys and really set themselves up for the future if they hit on a franchise signal caller. So again, just more evidence of that from Kenny Pickett, who's the newest player on the roster, newest quarterback in the room, and he understands what's kind of going on here for the Browns, as do we as outside observers, seeing how this thing has kind of played out and come together in the past couple months. Now, All that said, speaking of rookie quarterbacks, if you haven't seen Shedeur Sanders' latest Instagram post, go check it out because the more this guy talks, the more I think he's a perfect fit for the Cleveland Browns. I'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility to take control of your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. Take advantage of all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off. Yes, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for half off your first year. All right, so as I said, if you haven't seen Shedeur Sanders' latest Instagram post, you need to go check it out. I didn't clip this here to play, but I have like the general direct quote from him, and basically he was talking about in this post two of the questions he got asked at the combine that he thought were like the most interesting, or like that he gave good answers to, or that he felt he wanted to sort of elaborate on a little bit more. And it was, one of them was about just what a team is getting in him when he comes to the NFL. And he, at the combine, he alluded to like, hey, everywhere I go, I'm a program builder. We did it at Jackson State. We did it at Colorado. We took these programs that were not the best, and we made them prominent again. And so he elaborated on that. And in the quote here, again, I paraphrase a little bit because I took some parts out because it was somewhat long. But he said, quote, "The experience is there. What these teams are trying to do, the ones at the top of the draft, take a team that's not so good and change it and have instant success. It's all I've been doing for the past years of my life since I've been playing. We weren't always in the best situation team-wise, but we always made it work and got the most out of it. Whatever franchise drafts me, they're going to be extremely happy they made that decision, because the experience that I know what it's going to take to have immediate wins." And again, this echoes what he said at the combine. It's not anything new from Shedeur Sanders in the grand scheme of things, because this is kind of the mentality he's brought every time he's talked about his future in the NFL and what he sort of brings to the table. But the idea, like he alludes to it at the beginning of that line there, like what teams are trying to do, the teams at the top of the draft, what they're trying to do are be teams that are not so good and change that as quickly as possible, as instantly as possible. And he believes he is the guy that can do that can come in immediately and turn a franchise around, as he's done at the college level at two different stops. And he can continue that success at the next level and be that culture setter, that culture builder for a team. And I'm gonna be honest, like when he says these things, man, like I believe him. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Shedeur's mentality, his mindset, his quote unquote arrogance, as I guess some are calling it, both in NFL circles and otherwise, it's exactly what Cleveland needs. It is the exact mentality that a quarterback coming to this town needs to have. And the reason I say that, think about like everybody points to the last time this franchise had this franchise had a true franchise quarterback, game-changing quarterback, elite quarterback, at least for the time period, was Bernie Kosar. And there were signs of Baker, but it never quite came to fruition. And so because of that, like there is a lot of pressure to perform here. Whenever these quarterbacks get drafted by Cleveland, top of the draft or otherwise, there's instant pressure put on them to be that guy, be the guy that can do it since Bernie, like be the first guy to truly be a franchise quarterback for us here in Cleveland since Bernie Kosar. That's the level. That's the bar that's set. That is the you could call it an honor. Like that is what is bestowed on that person. It's a burden they must carry to be great and live up to that expectation and finally deliver Cleveland a franchise signal caller. I don't have any qualms about Shedeur Sanders being able to handle that. Like, not feel the outside pressure, not feel like it's too much or it's overwhelming or that Cleveland is expecting too much too soon. Like, he'll come in because of his previous history, but also just because of the mentality he has and the family he grew up in, and with the same sort of mentality as his dad Dion did. Like, he will take the reins of this franchise and he'll embrace that. He won't run from it. He won't be worried or scared about it, and he will turn it into, the ultimate positive and be that culture changer. I like this is, again, when he says it, I believe him, but when I really break it down, I believe it even more. And this is why I think like he could be the perfect fit for Cleveland. And it's not just because of that. Like, there has to be more to it than that, right? Like, it can't just be the attitude; it has to be the play. And I think when I watch this tape, like, I see a guy that can make it in the NFL. Do I think Cam Ward has a higher ceiling? Yes, I've been pretty clear about that. But I also think that like Shedeur can still be successful at the NFL level. He's gotten compared to, on some level, like Bo Nix, right? Like, if he can be Bo Nix, great. Like, Bo Nix had a great season last year, and if he's in the right system and Kevin Stefanski can put him in a spot where he's comfortable, why can't he do those things? Why can't he have success at the next level? He can read defenses. We've seen that. We've seen him be able to make most of the throws. I understand there's some questions about his arm strength, but that doesn't have to be the end all be all break, straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of his success. He can still be successful. And so, like, I know if the Browns draft him, that people are going to bring up the arrogance thing if they draft him. I know it. Like, they're going to hate it. They're going to hate it because of, it's not the right attitude they want from their quarterback, or they're not going to like his personality. They're not going to like that he's brash like his dad was. But for me, like, I'm not the least bit worried about any of those things, because I think it just speaks to his ability to come in and like really take the reins of a franchise and turn it around quickly, which is what this team is looking for. This team needs a guy to come in and, for Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski's sake, save their jobs, but also like get the franchise back on track because they botched the Deshaun Watson thing so badly. And also, let's not forget, I mentioned his name earlier, the last QB who came in with quote unquote too much arrogance, he became a fan favorite pretty damn quickly. He was embraced by the city, and he became the face of the franchise for a period of time there. Now, it didn't work out because of some immaturities there and, rifts in the locker room and all those things. I don't necessarily see that being as big of a problem with Shedeur. Baker was his own person, and he has to answer for those things himself. And I think he has. He even admitted like he had to learn from it. He had some growing up to do, and he's done that since. I think Shedeur is more mature than Baker coming out of college, but he still has a lot of the same swagger and the same sort of like confidence about him. And that's important to me. Like, I want that in the Browns' next quarterback. So for me, all these reasons, his ability, what he can do on the field, I think he's a perfect fit for Stefanski's offense, like to step in immediately day one, even as a rookie, and run it efficiently and just get better in it. But also because of the personality, the attitude, I think he can be the perfect quarterback for the Browns at the next level for a multitude of reasons. And I love whenever he talks like this and he talks about what he brings to the table and why he knows he can turn one of these franchises at the top of the draft around pretty quickly. It's music to my ears, because I think it's exactly what the Browns need. Another episode down with you, Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. We might have a bonus episode for you here on a Friday, so make sure to stay tuned for that, because Myles Garrett speaks to the media early afternoon on this wonderful Friday. And so I'm sure at some point later today, I'll have some reaction to that. So if that goes up, stay on the lookout for it. We'll have some thoughts for you on how that went, what he had to say, why he decided to come back to Cleveland, probably just because the $40 million a year, but also, I'm fascinated to hear what he says about if he now sees himself being here till the end of his career, or if he leaves that door open once again. So again, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can get updates or a notification when a new episode drops. And we appreciate you, as always, making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show, or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs, Locked On Guardians. Thanks for being an everyday at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. Peace.